This week's superhero spotlight is X-Force.
Select your hero.
So this was spurred on by the success of Deadpool and talk of a X-Force movie coming together again.
I never believed it was going to happen, but in a post-Deadpool world, I don't see a way around it.
It's realer than ever thanks to Deadpool. Like, it just was, for a long time, it seemed to just be a thing they owned that they didn't seem to... Fox could make a film with, but they never were going to do.
Yeah, but also now with the, the Jackman X-Men universe ending, to coincide with that, why not introduce a new team of X-Men?
Yeah, if they wanted to... I mean, they already technically rebooted the timeline, and that can just end with the Old Man Logan stuff that Jackman's doing, and then just restart it all over again, and even pretend like recast everybody since they're going to lose their first class group of actors after their third film. Like, I hope you enjoy J-Law as Mystique this time, because not getting it again, boys. But no, so X-Force is one of those teams you've heard about, but not a lot of people really know about them.
I got into comics, and it seemed like Marvel was trying to stress the importance of X-Force, but not many people were buying it.
They've never been more popular than they were in their first 2 years, I'd say. And it's all been downhill from there. But there was a time when they were the most popular comic in Marvel for a brief period. So the history of X-Force goes all the way back to New Mutants. New Mutants was started in the mid-'80s by Chris Claremont as a new X-Men spinoff that would take a new class of kids who would be the weirdo teens who were learning about being mutants, just like the X-Men were back in the 60s. And so it introduced guys who would stick around, such as Cannonball and Sunspot.
Yes, unforgettable.
But it kept changing and growing as time went on. It got passed around to writers, different writers and teams, but it never really got big until Rob Liefeld came on and joined Marvel Comics and joined New Mutants with issue 86, which was also the first appearance of Cable.
Really?
Yeah, and so...
Is that a Liefeld creation?
It is a Liefeld creation. Like, in Cable reignited the series. Like, he took over the series that New Mutants had been working under Xavier up to that point and living in the mansion. But then Cable brings in this whole new militaristic element and pouches and giant guns and space future stuff and mystery. Like,
it does embody everything that the 90s was.
Yeah, even though he first appeared in, 88.
Yeah,
so,
but it was like a trend that started late 80s that kind of defined 90, 91, 92 of more aggressive pouches.
He presages the 90s, definitely. He's the next natural step. Wolverine, though created in the 70s, was a very 80s guy.
Yeah.
And Wolverine was like, I am a mysterious character, I kill people, and I'm a jerk.
Yeah.
And now this was Cable taken to a militaristic area, and he's like, I'm a jerk, and I'm the captain of the team, and I might be from the future, and I've got cyborg arms.
A future we're trying to avoid, and I've got a weird reason why I have the cyborg arm, and it's mystery, 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 mystery.
So much mystery.
Okay, so that his mysterious origin isn't laid out up front.
No. And I definitely, when he was created, he was not... They didn't think, this is the guy who's going to be the son of Cyclops who was sent into the future.
Yeah.
Isn't... That wasn't their plan originally, I don't think. That brings us to New Mutants 100. New Mutants is getting so successful, you think, they're canceling it? That's weird, but it's just because they want to rebrand it for the 90s as a whole new series. And so New Mutants 100 basically just works as a preview to X-Force. It's got a shiny chrome cover, but it also... Rob Liefeld was such an engaging artist. Everybody wanted to read his books. He was becoming bigger than any character he drew. And he was also stocking up the series with more and more characters that he was into. That's when he created Shatterstar and Shatterstar, Copycat, aka Domino, and Feral. They all just joined the team in the last issues of New Mutants just so they can be in X-Force.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, you were correct. The love interest in Deadpool is Copycat, or it's the same secret identity Copycat has in the comics. So
she was in the 90s series, the miniseries.
Yeah. She was in the miniseries, but she was at first on the team under the guise of Domino, though she was a secret agent for Deadpool's team. And Deadpool was there from the start, too. Like, as they were ramping up to what X-Force would be, and in the first X-Force issues, Deadpool's one of their main adversaries. He's working for Tolliver with Kane and Brute and not Husk. It's such
Tusk,
like monosyllabic
Tusk,
dudes.
Sounds like 80s colognes, less 90s mutants.
And so then X-Force #1 launches, and it is until Jim Lee and Claremont and Todd McFarlane's #1s, it was the highest selling comic of all time. It's hard to.
It's over 1 million, right? Like
over 1 million, and we make fun of Liefeld, and his comics look silly now, and we look back and say, like,
501 Jeans commercial.
You look back and say, how did I read these comics and like take them at face value and not like giggle at them? But it's the same deal with like, how'd you listen to Poison or all these hair metal bands and not laugh in their faces? It was a different time. And
excuse me for the kids out there listening to LFO. Thank you very much.
And I would say, looking back on it now, Liefeld, more than anybody, more than Jim Lee, more than Todd McFarlane, he changed comic books in the 90s for better and for worse, because X-Force was the first one of those books to be launched as his book. Like, this is the Liefeld book. His art is all over the cover. This is all for him. It's all flashy. And they reprinted it and resold it. It came pre-polybagged with 7 different cards in it, so everybody bought them to collect the cards.
What was the rare one that was always... Was that cable card, or there was some...
I think it was one that was just cable. When I looked it up today, the only one I could find was a picture on the wiki page, was the ensemble picture. And they were basically like the Marvel 90s cards in that similar style, but it...
What year was X-Force 1?
This was 1990.
Okay.
So it was so on the cutting edge, but it also, you can see they did all these things that inflated the market obscenely.
Yeah, because I to this day still have an X-Force in a bag. Like just because I'm like, I ended up with probably 5 or 6 because they printed so many, because they knew they could sell that many. But yeah, I just remember years later, like rifling through long boxes at comic shops and like, there's that variant I never saw. There's that variant I never saw. They're all less than cover price now.
And Marvel was ahead of the curve on that stuff. It took DC till about 92 or 3 to start doing that stuff with the death of Superman and Nightfall with Superman and Batman.
You're crediting this to Liefeld, or is this just like the era of like, there's no digital version of comics? There aren't a lot of comic programs on. Like, comic popularity was solely rooted within the...
I mean, it was in the direct market, but he made it cool. He was so cool, you had to get every issue. Or you had to say...
It was an artist and a style that made it look less like... Because even the 80s comics still looked like comic books. These looked like, wow, what is that? It's just every character is huge and ridiculous and has this mix of 80s and 90s fashion that makes no sense.
They all have pierced ears.
It was such a mystery. Sorry, I felt it had been too long since the thing. And that book doing so well then led to them launching the Jim Lee book at X-Men and X-Men #1. It's selling even more. Same with Todd McFarlane being spun off to do his own Spider-Man book in 91, I believe it was Spider-Man #1.
Man, I would have swore Spider-Man 1 was before X-Force, but I guess not.
Brett, you are right. By my count, X-Force #4 or 5 leads right into Spider-Man 16. So Spider-Man was first, but all right. But still, X-Force outsold it. But they had the similar strategy of multiple covers, bagged and board. X-Force just expanded upon that. But the problem was they got so popular, the artists realized, even though they were getting paid a lot more, like they were getting paid well, they didn't own their stuff. And they weren't making the millions that Marvel was making off of their comics. And so Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, Jim Valentino, Eric Larson, Will Portastio, Mark Silvestri, and Rob Liefeld, they all go off to start Image. To show you how big Liefeld was, the first Image book, it was Youngblood. Youngblood #1 was the first one, which, if you want a continuation of his version of X-Force, read Youngblood.
It's great because Youngblood #1 is such a, like...
It was a crazy seller too.
Yeah, but if I just describe 2 teams to you and I put pictures up with no logo above them, you'd be like, "Is that Youngblood?"
Yeah, he just mixed and matched. Like I think he didn't have a writer driving him anymore, and so he just kind of mixed and matched all his favorite types of things to draw. Like, here's the giant guy, here's the little guy,
whose name is Badrock, by the way.
Oh yeah, here's Shaft, the guy who was basically his Hawkeye, except red-haired and looked kind of like him. And it was ridiculous. It was always ridiculous, but it was fun too. I got into reading X-Force because only lightly at first because of that crossover issue with Spider-Man.
Yeah, there was a very famous Todd McFarlane's final issue.
It was his final issue and one of Liefeld's final issues.
Yeah, Spider-Man 16, which is notable because it's a sideways issue. Instead of reading it left to right, you actually rotate the comic and read it almost like a centerfold.
It was in landscape view before it was a thing.
And as a comic book, it was that just to be a showcase for, really for Juggernaut, who, when McFarlane blew him up to insane proportions, that then informed like Children of the Atom, the arcade game, and your entire impression of what Juggernaut is really taken from that, because before that he's big, but he's not that.
He's not Hulk big.
Yeah. And then that crossed over with X-Force 4, I think, or X-Force
X-Force
6?
4 and 5.
4 and 5, and then that's also a sideways issue that kind of concludes that story or starts it. I can't remember.
It concluded it, and it also has just the gritty teeth and stuff, and it was so aggressive, and it's like we're so edgy.
Yep, it was getting to be, the 90s.
It was totally 90s. Like Juggernaut gets stabbed in the eyes by Shatterstar in that book.
Normally it shouldn't even penetrate his eyeball, but now it does, just so he can bleed and regenerate his eye.
I would bet Todd McFarlane wrote one line that my magic swords go through his thing. Yeah, and also what dates it is that they're trying to destroy the World Trade Center in that issue. Or they kind of do, like they have to. It all takes place in the ruins of the World Trade Center, the big fight between X-Force and also Spider...
Is that before even the first attack on it?
This would have been like 92 or
because 93 is that other Trade Center bombing where the bomb went off in the parking garage.
Oh, actually, this city bombing?
No,
the first
93. Yeah, this would have been before this. This was 92.
Man. So, what hero's specialty is melting steel beams?
Sunspot totally could. He's a regular member of the team.
Can melt steel beams.
What country is he from, Henry?
So the classic, I think, what you define as the classic X-Force team is Boomer/Boom Boom.
Yeah.
Cable as their leader. Cannonball is the sometimes leader. Copycat and/or Domino, they kind of are both been on the team. Feral, or Wolfsbane, who was a dog, a sentient mutant dog that then turned into a full-blown furry person.
Yeah, with boobs and
a wild white streak in their hair. Shatterstar and Richter, who later got gay with each other.
Oh, really?
In X Factor, yeah. Rob Liefeld said, I didn't create those two as a couple, but Fabian, who is the co-creator, Fabian Isaias, he said, no, I did. They just wouldn't let me do it, and I'm sorry you didn't notice it, Rob. But and then Warpath was an early member too.
Very sensitive.
Yeah, well, he was the follow-up to Thunderbird, but he was like his brother, Thunderbird, of the all-new, or the giant-sized X-Men team.
Only wasn't killed immediately.
He lived a little bit longer, and he was a little more intense, obviously, with his name Warpath.
Sure. Yeah, there's a great panel of him and trying to keep Juggernaut at bay. And he's supposed to be the huge guy, and even he is dwarfed by Juggernaut.
Yeah, so ridiculous. Oh, and then there's Sunspot.
Yeah.
Those are the regular members of classic X-Force. And so
But what was the angle for their comic? It's like X Factor has had its angle, and
Well, it was that Cable kind of indoctrinated them in a way where he's just, I'm a more militaristic dude. We can't stay in one place. Let's go on the road and we're going to fight. We're going to fight dudes from the future in X-Force, and we're going to fight Deadpool, and we're going to fight my evil twin from the future too.
Oh yeah,
and his clone twin. And
get ready for that.
Yeah, that's where we get into it right here. So Liefeld officially stops drawing the book at issue 8, though they keep using his he's a credited plotter for 3 more issues. And then we get to issue 15. They wrap up all the stuff that started in issue 1. They beat Deadpool. They find the real Domino, and Cable quits the team. For 9 issues, he's gone, and that's because we're getting into the Executioner song, if you remember that one.
The
Executioner song, where Cable is framed for trying to assassinate Xavier, and it's also where they release the legacy virus, which is mutant AIDS, as we talked about on the Colossus superhero spotlight. And this was when Cable was more hot than ever, and this showed how hot X-Force was too, because they were pretty central to this mega X-Men crossover that finally was bringing together all the X-books. And that was another joke at the time, that mutants were so big, and that any book, you slap an X on a book, it'd be huge. There were even knockoff books that were like EX mutants. all these other and everything else had mutants in it.
And the Discovery Channel show Axemen.
They were really ripping them off there at the Discovery Channel, man.
But it was like you said, it's an important sign because X-Men was home to the universe-altering crossover, but only within the mutants. Like, it rarely spilled out over until Onslaught. It didn't really spill over into the main universe. Yeah. But yeah, this was like, we've done Inferno, we've done Dark Phoenix, we've done this, but now it's like, it's all X-Force. And
X-Force was at the center of it. It was a battle between teams, X-Factor and X-Men versus X-Force. Yeah. And X-Force ended up losing, or they kind of teamed up, and then they realized, Cable's not the guy, and it's Strife. We got to stop him. And they do stop Strife. Cable and Strife kind of disappear together, and X-Force thinks they are going to be kind of rudderless at that point. And then about 2 issues later comes the landmark issue 25. Greg Capullo comes on as the artist. He was in their new generation of flashy artists who would later go on to draw Spawn and currently Batman. He did the long. Greg Capullo is the one who did the very long run on Batman with Scott Snyder right now, and that's when Cable resumed being on the team, but it was just a bunch of ups and downs for X-Force from then. Like, after Age of Apocalypse, they kind of reset again. Shatterstar gets his background explained. Cable kind of leaves because he's got his own solo book, so he can't be in a team book as much. Cannonball quits and joins the X-Men. He's one of those. You see that, I think, every new team of Avengers or X-Men, they always try to elevate somebody. Like, you were on the team. Same with like Justice League. Like, they'd say, you were on the Teen Titans. Now you're the new guy on this team of Justice League. Maybe you're cool now. Right. But rarely stuck. It did not stick with Cannonball. He did not become a cool guy. X-Force took another turn in the 2000s with a Warren Ellis reboot, which is, I never read it, but just reading about it is the most Warren Ellis-y thing ever, where they're a much more proactive Strike Force type team, and they're all being bossed around by a typically cynical British person, Peter Wisdom. And I mean, that is just classic. It is classic Warren Ellis of, well, what if a British guy who hates himself bossed around people? That's pretty much half of Warren Ellis's books. And then came the 2001 reboot, which is when I most love X-Force. X-Force, surprisingly, had never been renumbered to that point by 2001. Unless you count like Age of Apocalypse. Right. Not really. It had never been rebooted. And so issue 115 in 2001 is part of a line-wide X-Men rebootage. It gets rebooted by Peter Milligan and Michael Allred. And they decide they will take the X-Force name and nothing else. And it is just a team of reality stars and wannabe celebrities who also have mutant powers, and they just work for corporations and care more about their like revenue on merchandise than they do being superheroes. It's a fun team, and it's a really like great satirical book, though X-Force fans were really pissed off about it because they thought that book could be called anything. Why are you calling it X-Force?
And that book that nobody liked.
And they like the regular X-Force team had been exploded in their last issue before the X-Force took over, but then they had a running gag in the book when it was called X-Force that they kept almost being sued by this team who was like, no, we own the rights to the X-Force name. We can't call ourselves that. And they even got attacked by the classic X-Force team in one issue. Like Sunspot was saying, give us our name back, you attention hogs. It ended at 129, though it continued as X-Statix for another couple of years. That's traditionally what it's known as, is X-Statix, not
X-Force.
That
omnibus. It is huge and sun-bleached. Shouldn't have left it so close to the window.
And they renamed it. Yeah, what a waste of such an expensive book.
The pages are fine.
Yeah, you need one of those like library podiums or whatever to stand it up on and then flip through it with a page turning stick. And then
every Sunday before church, just get out a candle, light it, flip through those pages.
But X-Statix got canceled, so there could be a relaunch of the traditional X-Force book in a miniseries form in 2004 with Fabian and Rob coming back.
Yes, and I remember this.
I'd say Rob Liefeld, out of all Image creators, he's been the most ready to return to Marvel and DC. Like, he's done the most work with them. Even though he still owns a chunk of Image, or he has his own studio, he wanted to go back to... He's an unpredictable guy, honestly, Rob Liefeld. Like, he's also one of the guys who came back for the Heroes Reborn stuff with Jim Lee.
Yes.
Which...
the most famous pictures of Captain America.
Yeah. Honestly, all of those books aren't good. when you look back at them, but the Jim Lee ones, at least, they're functional books. Like the Rob Liefeld's Captain America is ridiculous in the ways you expected it to be, but it was 6 years removed from X-Force, and it just wasn't as current as it used to be.
We were in the late 90s. He's thinking the early 90s.
Exactly. He's thinking grunge when he should be thinking boy bands.
That's right.
So, yeah, there were a bunch of more attempts to reboot the X-Force from that point on, like post-M-Day, when House of M happened and all the no more mutants happened. And
Jesus, I still think of that as recent, and it was 11 years ago.
2004, yes. Yeah, it was. Cable kind of split off from the X-Force, though. He had a run-in with them where he kidnapped Hope, who was the first new mutant born after M-Day. He took her to the future, trained her for 16 years, and then brought her back. And X-Force were the ones who went to try to hunt Cable down and bring him back to our timeline.
So she did to her what others had done to him.
Yeah, it's tradition. It's a tradition for Cable. That then leads us to 2008, where they rebooted X-Force once more. And this is when X-Force became Cyclops' team. Cyclops decided he needed a team that had a license to kill, where he could send the killer X-Men on missions that involve, say, Apocalypse has been reborn, somebody's got to murder him. He's a kid now, he can't grow up. And he would that's when he put together a team of the X-Men who kill that included Caliban, Hepzibah, Warpath and Wolfsbane were back, but then also Wolverine, Archangel were on the team too, as were new recruits X-23 and Deadpool, and that was like the first time Deadpool had been on a team. And it was like this kind of testing. You look back on it now, it's like this testing ground to see, can Deadpool work on a team? Because he's kind of a crazy person who murders people and talks to the camera.
Because then he was in Thunderbolts for a while. That was actually pretty decent.
Yeah, it's Thunderbolts run. And
which is remarkably similar to this X-Force idea, now that I think about it.
Yeah, they pretty much are all very similar. And then 2012, that led to a splitting of the X-Force teams, where there were two X-Force books at the same time.
Definitely enough of an audience for this.
Yeah, it only lasted 15 issues. But
I can't believe it.
So there was Uncanny X-Force, which was a team run by Psylocke, and had a lot of the same killer X-Force team members. But then there was Cable and his X-Force. So after Avengers vs. X-Men, Cable decided to restart his X-Force in a traditional style of a nomadic team of mutants going on militaristic journeys and listening to Cable's crazy stuff. And that team brought back dudes like Domino to the group and Boom Boom.
Yeah.
But also Colossus was a team member, and Forge, and Dr. Nemesis. So a lot of weirdos, and they, of course, came to fight each other. And then the teams...
Man, Mr. Nemesis must be so proud.
And then the teams reformed to be just a new X-Force series. And that lasted 15 issues. And then that got ended for the new Uncanny Avengers is the closest thing you're going to see to an X-Force team. There's no X-Force book right now, but Cable is a member of Uncanny Avengers, and he was the big reveal in issue 2 of like, Cable's a new member, that's where we're at now. And he's being drawn in his most like 90s way. They're like, no more accessories, more pouches, more metal, more chrome around him.
But then for the purposes of a movie, you have to assume they'll go with probably Deadpool, Cable,
You think
Domino
/ Wolfsbane has got to be there. Well, Domino too.
She was already in it though. Is Copycat or
but
Copycat for real, not Domino.
Yeah, maybe they just make her. They just skip the Copycat stuff. Like, no, you're Domino. Just be Domino.
Sure.
It's a striking design. Domino's a striking.
I think
design.
You need her or Boom Boom. You need one of them.
Yeah,
and Shatterstar.
I mean, you got to have Shatterstar. Richter might be hard to put in a movie because his earthquake powers are a bit ridiculous.
Sure.
But Shatterstar's just a dude with cool double swords.
Yeah.
I love his designs. Like, who needs one sword? I got double swords.
I got two weird rebar looking swords, and I have a constant like Glass Joe boxing mask on my head.
Yep.
Like,
and he's got like 4. No, he's not like Longshot, and then he has 4 fingers, but he is from Murder World,
Mojoverse.
Yeah, the home of Mojo and Longshot.
I think Murder World.
Yeah, Murder World. He's from there, and he was like trained to be a killer on television, and then had to be humanized. That's when he got gay with Richter. And then when it comes to, I usually wrap these up with, and they've appeared in TV shows but the X-Force pretty much never appeared in stuff.
Right.
I think there were little one-off appearances of like Cable and the X-Force. I think you can spot Cable or some X-Force characters in the animated opening to the X-Men 92.
Oh, Cable's definitely in the show.
Yeah,
but X-Force, I guess, is a unit, yeah.
Yeah, though the X-Force was still so big, just from comics, that they got their own toy line when the X-Men toys were at their hottest.
Yep,
like,
I remember that.
It was X-Force branded. That's where I got Kane, Deadpool, Cable, Strife.
Yeah, it lasted for a while because there's like 3 or 4 Cables. There's 2 Deadpools.
There was a Richter that you wound up and then he like vibrated around.
There were 2 different Kane figures of all people.
Well, the first Cable sucked. Like the first Cable had
his weird
an
arm.
Unmovable metal arm that didn't even have the lines on it. It was just gray painted, and it just moved up and down like this.
And then Cable 2 is his like spacesuit.
Yeah, I like the spacesuit a little better.
But then Cable 3 was finally like, okay, this is a Cable toy we can all get behind.
And
trust me, I'm right.
And then in the video games, like Cable and other characters,
I was thinking of.
They appear. Cable is a fighter on his own, and I believe just Marvel vs. Capcom 2, right? That's the only one he was in.
One of the most used characters in MVC2.
He's a good one.
Along with Marrow, who was briefly an X-Force member.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like Cable's in... Where does Cable appear in? He also appears in the Deadpool video game, and X-Force characters appear in background in I think one of Deadpool's stages or endings in MVC3 or Super
probably,
MVC3, whatever it's called.
Ultimate,
of course, of course. But it's pretty much it. Like Cable appears in a lot of stuff, but rarely with his X-Force cronies backing him up.
It's a testament to the power of the '90s, where like. Everyone knows Venom, but Venom has not been Eddie Brock or that version of Venom longer than he ever was that. But the saturation for comics was so great that everyone knows Venom and probably even knows the name Eddie Brock to a lesser extent, but they know that Venom. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people know X-Force and have everything you just said, pretty much anything after minute 5 is like, what? They did what?
They did what now? Yeah, it's all just it's a series of rebrandings to try to recapture that 90s magic with
and I'm no different. Like I was even paying kind of attention the whole time and was like, X-Force is still around? Like even I was sometimes just, what? I thought Cable was in that group.
I mean, you'd also get the same kind of fulfillment from reading the Cable solo books or the Cable and Deadpool books that Liefeld and Fabian did. Yeah. And so then there's been the X-Force film, which was announced in 2013. They've been wanting to do it since then, but it just felt like a logo on a thing. They didn't know what they wanted to do with it.
Like that Namor that Namor logo from 2002 that Universal put up.
And but meanwhile, they've now actually got the real impetus to do it because Deadpool was so successful. If they're going to have Cable in the next one, in the next Deadpool, you would think X-Force directly follows that, and it would keep in the same R-rated genre and just be like, you know what, well, we don't need the X-Men for this. We'll just be in our own corner with our own ridiculous mutant characters.
I feel like they should just call the movie Deadpool and Cable, or Cable and Deadpool, and then if that's good enough, then you can maybe go for the X-Force thing.
Deadpool's X-Force.
The
X-Force,
maybe.
or whatever.
Cable and Deadpool got me back into comics, like period. Like I really would love to see at least one movie focused on them is just a duo.
It's just that
smaller movie.
All the other it's Cable and Deadpool, who's nominally an X-Force member. He was honestly fighting the X-Force more often than he was a member of them. And then below them is every other X-Force character. People really don't care as much about
for me, Shatterstar's maybe the next most popular, but that might only be because that's the 3 friends that I had who were into X-Force. That's the only other character they really talked about.
People, write your congressman Carl Urban for Cable. 2016. Let's do this. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, I'm done with that.
So that is the superhero Spotlight for X-Force.